Hi, I'm Mateo Rivera, the Cinematic Catholic, and we asked you guys in a poll about a week ago what type of content you would like to see from us, and you guys voted overwhelmingly for good TV shows that Catholics can actually watch. Which, I'll be honest, that's a little tricky. Because with a TV show, there is so much growth and change that happens with the characters throughout the series. Characters make so many choices, oftentimes not for the better, because that's what moves the plot forward. And so, unless you want to go with something explicitly religious like The Chosen, then it can be tough to find good TV that doesn't conflict with Catholic teaching in one way or another. However, I think that's very similar to real life. I mean, life is messy. But it's when you can look past all of the things going wrong and see what God is doing in our lives through the mess that you begin to see his work being done all around us. This leads me to the first TV show that I want to review for you guys, and to be completely transparent, I am still in the middle of watching it. My wife and I are about halfway through season 2, but I feel like I've got a good enough grasp on the vibe of the show, the tone of it, who all the characters are. I've kind of seen everything that the show has to throw at me, and so today I want to talk to you guys about if Catholics should watch Jane the Virgin.
Dr. Alver, hi. Thank you for seeing me. It's the craziest thing, right? These pregnancy tests keep coming back positive, and there's got to be a reason, right? Like some kind of hormonal thing.
There is a reason. And the reason the test came back positive is I accidentally inseminated you 2 weeks ago.
You what?
Now, Jane the Virgin is a show that I heard about for many years. My wife and I kind of accidentally fell into watching it. It was recommended to us while scrolling through Netflix with one of my non-religious friends, and he was like, oh, you'll like it because she's Catholic. Which did pique my interest because it made me wonder, how are Catholics perceived in this show? And I will say, for the most part, I was pleasantly surprised. The show follows Jane, who is indeed a virgin by choice. She is engaged and waiting to have sex until marriage, but her life is completely flipped upside down when what was supposed to be a routine doctor visit ends up in her accidentally getting artificially inseminated, meaning she is now a pregnant virgin. Which, I gotta be honest, when I first heard the premise of this show, I was like, that sounds pretty good. Count me in. I was not ready for just how good this show is. Jane the Virgin is an American series, but it does often play on the familiar tropes from Spanish telenovelas. That's a hard word to say. But I was truly amazed at how much story and plot was just embedded into every single episode, and they always seem to end on this massive cliffhanger. And as somebody that has never watched a Spanish novela in their life, there was a part of me that's like, I think I'm missing out here. There are so many twists and turns that this show throws at you, and so if you are looking for a new show to get hooked on, this is definitely good TV for sure. Now, Catholic-wise, there are a few contingencies. The official synopsis on IMDb does read, a young, devout Catholic woman discovers that she has been accidentally artificially inseminated. So they definitely are trying to play up that Catholic angle, and I think for the most part, they mostly get things right. Her grandmother in particular, I'd say, is the more devout one on the show. But we do see her and Jane praying the rosary from time to time, mostly in times of anguish or stress. And to their credit, they do include a fair amount of prayer in the show, actually reciting the prayers and getting a lot of them actually correct, like in scenes when they're in church and whatnot. Plus, whenever there's a life or death situation, which actually happens more often than you'd think. And during those times, they do typically include a scene of Jane and her family praying, asking God for guidance or answers or a clear path. However, Jane is still a human being, and she makes a lot of choices in the show that does kind of make me question where the bar is for devout Catholic. Like I mentioned before, she is saving herself for marriage, and this is one area that I think the show actually does a really good job at. Specifically, I think it's good at depicting what it's like for a person in their mid-20s who is out there in the world dating and also practicing chastity, and a lot of the challenges that come with that. Because it is not always easy to pull back when you're in the heat of the moment, and multiple times in the show, it is not Jane who turns down the opportunity to have sex. But I also think that what is very admirable as well is that the people that Jane dates in the show knows what she wants, and they respect that. And so there are times in the show where Jane wants to move forward, and the person that she's with tells her, you've told me what your beliefs are, and I want to respect that, and I want to honor the bar that you have set. Which I gotta say, for a secular TV show, That's pretty good. Grading on a curve here, of course, but I mean, hey, I'll take what I can get. And I will say the treatment of religion as a whole on the show feels like it's coming from a place of love, even if everything that's depicted isn't 100% accurate. There are some times where they make religion feel a little bit more like a superstition and less like a relationship with God. But to be completely honest, it feels like this TV show was written by somebody that grew up religious, is no longer religious, but doesn't have any animosity towards it. They probably have a lot of fond memories of their parents and their grandparents and going to church as a kid and like all of these things that they then try and blend with where they are at in their life today. But this show does not try and bash religion or disprove anything. And while this show may not get everything correct, there is a fondness for faith and God and just spiritual strength in general. Now, there are a few cons of the show that may be a deal breaker for some of you, depending on your situation. Just because Jane is waiting for marriage does not mean that everybody on this show is. There are a fair amount of hookups and affairs and scandals and cheating and just the things you would expect on a modern day soap opera or telenovela. And so because of that, I would say that this is a TV show for the parents to watch once the kids have gone to bed. I'm sorry, little Timmy, you can't watch Jane the Virgin. But on the other hand, I will say that this show feels older than it is, both in that it has that like 2000s vibe, but also in the censorship, meaning that there's no nudity or really anything too scandalous. They do keep it at a PG-13 rating when it comes to those intimate scenes. Now, there are a few same-sex couples in the show as well, mostly women, and in a few intimate scenes as well. So if that is a deal breaker to you or something that you are sensitive to, then I would say maybe skip out on this one. But those scenes can be few and far between. But I do believe that the pros of this show ultimately weigh out the cons in the sense that Jane is a good person and she makes the people around her better. She loves in a way that is pure and good, and even though not everyone that she interacts with is religious or has their life on a righteous path, you can see her influence all throughout the show. And my wife actually made a good point whenever we were talking about it, and she says that not everyone is religious, so not everyone would ask, what would Jesus do? But if they know somebody that is Catholic and is living their life morally right, then they may ask, what would Jane do? And that's why as Catholics, it's important to be Christ to everybody that we encounter. Because when we do that, Christ has the ability to act through us and touch people's lives. Jane the Virgin is not a perfect show, and from a Catholic sense, it can sometimes be very Catholic-light. But if you want to see somebody living out their faith in modern day life, with all of the good, the bad, and the ugly choices that come with that, and if you're well formed enough to know what is authentic Catholicism and what is fictionalized, then I think you may find that Jane the Virgin has a lot of diamonds in the rough. For a critical score, I'm going to give this an 8 out of 10. This is a very captivating show, dare I say, even kind of addicting. And for a Catholic score, I'm going to give this a 6 out of 10. It's not great, but it's a whole lot better than how I've seen Catholicism portrayed in a lot of other shows. But if you've seen Jane the Virgin, do you agree with me? Do you disagree? I would love to hear what you think in the comments down below. And guys, thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed my review. Once again, my name is Mateo Rivera, and until next time, hasta la vista.